in the country. There's like 3% Muslim, I think.
It's about 4% Muslim.
Yeah, that's, population-wise, just statistically speaking, it's a Christian country, right?
Yeah.
So just on that alone.
Guys, he doesn't want to be on film, so just film me.
Bloody hell.
Yeah.
So basically, just based on that, when I take a walk down Notting Hill Gate to Marble Arch, I see degeneracy in front of me.
But what does that say?
I see 16-year-olds naked.
What's that got to do with Christianity?
No, but this is your land. This is the government.
Whose land?
This is the governance.
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Statistically, it's a Christian country.
Hold on one second.
We just
Hold on one second. Hold on one second.
Yeah.
You're assuming that what's normative to Islam and Islamic categories, yes you are.
Yeah.
What is normative to Islam and Islamic categories is applicable. What you're assuming, I'm going to answer that question. You're assuming that what is normative to Islam and Islamic categories is also normative to Christians and Christian categories, which tells me that you've never done comparative religion in your life. I've got a degree in it. I can tell that you've never studied it.
Fine.
Let me finish. Secondly. So when you make statements like, this is your land, England is a liberal, Western, secular democracy. On paper, it has an official religion. That is the Church of England. But in reality, the English have long since stopped being Christian. They haven't been Christian for decades.
Why?
I haven't finished.
Who do we blame
I haven't finished. Right? But let's look at the erosion that's happening inside the Islamic world, like Tunisia. Tunisia has been abandoned along with Morocco by other Muslims because it's gone beyond the pale of what Islam looks like. Look at Saudi Arabia. The Crown Prince is at this exact moment in time liberalizing the laws of Saudi Arabia. There are now nightclubs in Saudi Arabia. There are now cinemas in Saudi Arabia. No, I've got a Tunisian friend who just came back there quite recently.
I've been to Tunisia.
When he went to Tunisia, he said he went there and he lost more iman, he lost more faith going to Tunisia than he did from living in France. Why? Because Tunisia is abandoning Islam. The rot of liberalism is everywhere. Christians face it, you face it as Muslims. Yeah, if you go on Edgware Road, who's packing the casinos? People from China and the Southeast Asia, and Arabs, Arab Muslims are packing those casinos.
Okay, so
you go to the nightclub, who are the wide boys going up and trying to chat up the white easy meat?
So
it's Asian Muslims.
So let's get this right. When a country like Saudi somewhat deteriorates in its religious kind of, application to how they govern the society, we blame Islam, right? But when Britain becomes like the most degenerate, like one of the most degenerate cities in the world, it has nothing to do with fall of Christianity and the lack of faith that Christians have. When you look at the number of, there is a Trocadero in Piccadilly is being turned into a mosque.
Yeah, I know.
Where the church, what's happened to all the churches? There's like a big church in Westbourne Grove that's turned into a house. One of the biggest churches in Mayfair. I've been there twice and it's empty. I could take you there literally now. We could film it. Nobody's interested. And I see more and more Christians opening up to this idea of LGBT, abortions, accept anything, love whatever. They have no standard. Now I'm not an expert of religion, but all I can see, the only group of people that are standing up to this nonsense globally are Muslims.
Can I reply to that?
Absolutely.
Right. So firstly, the church is not a building. The body of Christ is the people.
It represents Christians.
Now notice, I didn't interrupt you, but once again, you can't control yourself or even show the basics of decency in conversation. I did not interrupt you, don't interrupt me. This is what our conversation works. We listen to one another. So let's do that, right? Now you point to closing down churches, right? In Iran, there are closing down mosques. But there are no opening churches. Yes, thousands of them. Yes, thousands of them. Now I'm going to finish my point. 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 In Iran, there are thousands of mosques closing down. In Turkey, there are thousands of empty mosques. What does that say about anything to do with the question that you're raising? You're just throwing this out as some kind of triumphant statement.
Oh, it says a lot.
By contrast, Christianity is growing in growing in Iran. In Indonesia, Muslims regularly protest because Christians keep opening new churches, and Muslims are protesting about the opening of new churches in Indonesia. The reality is there are three things that we need to recognize. Liberal humanism is not Christianity. Liberal humanism is not Islam. Islam is not Christianity. Christianity is not Islam. Liberal humanism, both Muslims and Christians agree, is degenerate. And there are many examples of Christians opposing it. If you don't believe me, just Google right now Christian concern and look at their caseload. Loads of Christians are losing their jobs. Loads of Christians are going to court. Loads of Christians are being prosecuted because we don't go along with the LGBT agenda. We don't go along with a trans agenda. We don't go. I'm going to come and debate you in a second. I'll come and debate you. I'll come and debate you in a second, right? And he'll run away, right? But here's the thing, right? When Christians go along with that which is degenerate, I can't find any justification for it in the Bible. But I say to you that polygamy is degenerate, abortion is degenerate, enslaving people is degenerate, domestic abuse is degenerate, but I can show all of them in the Quran and the Hadith. And so when I condemn the degeneracy of Islam, I'm condemning what is in your book. When you condemn the degeneracy of the church, and I admit there are degenerate churches, you can't point to my Bible to show me where my Bible justifies that corruption of the faith. And that's the difference.
Yeah, the degeneracy of Islam you mentioned. Polygamy, what, slavery?
Slavery, yeah.
Anything else?
Abortion.
Okay, abortion, right? I've been to several countries in the Middle East. I've been to parts of North Africa.
Yeah.
I've been to Far East, US. I've never seen this anywhere. I haven't seen polygamy. I think polygamy probably occurs in private, right? But for you to say that's degeneracy, one moment. The reality is, it first of all doesn't bother me because I don't see it. But the way that this, for instance, the degeneracy of Christianity, or at least how they accept everybody to be whatever they want to be, and they're flexible with everything else. I see it right in front of me almost every single day. And if you deny that this is a Christian nation, is there any nation on the planet that you would consider to be Christian? Because I can give you many examples of Islamic countries.
Okay.
And
Shall I reply?
You know what? I don't know how many mosques have shut down in Iran, but if I take you there, and if you take an example of some of the 16-year-old girls who walk around the way they do today, they wouldn't stand more than 5 minutes.
Can I reply?
Of course, yeah. Okay.
So the reality is, you're arguing from a fallacy, and you're also arguing from generalizations. You're talking about the church. You're talking about the church as if the church is just one block thing, right? And that therefore, when you point to, say, a corrupt Church of England priest who celebrates transgenderism, that represents all churches. I guarantee there are lots of Christians in this corner today that have gone to churches where that is not celebrated, and it is not part of what Christianity teaches. And therefore, when you speak like that, what you're demonstrating is utter ignorance. If I said to you, and I notice I only raise my voice when you interrupt because you have no manners, but if I said to you that there are mosques in London pushing the idea of Islamic supremacism and supporting Islamic terrorism, and then said that represents all Muslims, you would call me out and say that's Islamophobic. But yet you are here right now practicing Christophobia by generalizing about Christians and talking as if all Christians are the same because of some bad apples. Now let me continue. I'm going to finish my point, because once again, I let you speak, I didn't interrupt you, you've interrupted me, and so now I have to remind you of basic manners. Yeah? And the more you interrupt, the longer I have to talk, because I have to keep stopping and spending 4 minutes reminding you not to interrupt. And I don't know how many times we have to do this lesson before you learn the basics of conversation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, right, when we look at Islam, it practices things that are degenerate. But the difference is, I am not blaming Muslims who don't practice Islam, who go out and chat up girls and go to nightclubs and have sex outside of marriage. I'm not condemning Muslims because of their behavior. Why? because that would be intellectually dishonest, which is the intellectual dishonesty that you're practicing right now. You're looking at some bad Christians and you're going, why are Christians like this? Well, I could just go, well, why are Arab Muslims going to the casinos on Edgware Road? Because they can't gamble in Saudi Arabia, so they come to London to gamble. Ladies and gentlemen, but I don't do that. Why don't I do that? Because that's intellectually dishonest. What I criticize Muslims for is because of what their Quran and Hadiths teach them. That's what I condemn Muslim practice for. So here's my challenge to you. Get out this New Testament that obviously you've never read and show me in the New Testament some practice that you want to condemn from the New Testament, and I'll get out my Quran and I'll show you a practice from the Quran that I want to condemn.
So you're telling me the text is fine, but the followers have a problem, right? Yeah.
What I'm saying is, no. What I'm saying is, he's generalizing. No, you're not. No, you've not agreed with me. You've not agreed with me because you haven't heard me. Did I say all followers? Did I say all followers? Did I say all followers? No, I didn't. He's not listening. He's not listening. Try and listen. Go on. Try again.
So the text perfect, but the followers are imperfect. And all I'm saying, if we live in a world of sin and all the crazy that we're seeing, if the only people who are standing up to this are Muslims, what does that say? You want to tell me you're unity? You're not united.
Shall I reply?
Christians are all over the place.
Shall I reply?
Of course you can. You've been talking for like, go.
Right, now please note, I ask if I can reply. I don't just interrupt.
I'd love to hear
now,
it.
once again, he didn't actually listen. He didn't actually listen. He said the text is fine. This is what he said. He said the text is fine, and then he goes on to say that the followers are weak. And what I pointed out is there are weak Muslim followers who go to nightclubs. Are all those Muslims that industrially thousands of young children in the north of England good Muslims or bad Muslims? Obviously he'd want to say bad Muslims. Fine. So let's not judge all Muslims by the bad Muslims. Let's judge Islam by the book. And let's judge Muslim behavior by how they adhere to the book. And he should do the same. Now, ladies and gentlemen, he tried once again to make a sweeping generalization that Christians are all over the place. En contraire, mon ami. The reality is that every Christian that is faithful to the apostolic teaching is in the same place. Christians who are faithful to the apostolic teaching believe in monogamous marriages. Christians who believe in apostolic teaching don't practice slavery. Christians who believe in apostolic teaching don't practice unfaithfulness in their beds. Christians who are faithful to their teaching practice charity to the poor. Christians who are faithful to their teaching look after and honor their mother and father. And I'm just going to give you examples because he's not listening to anything I'm saying. So I'm going to keep giving examples. Christians who are faithful to their teachings don't practice abortion. But Muslims who are faithful to their teaching will practice slavery, will practice polygamy, will practice abortion. They even forbid good things like adoption. So what's degenerate? Islam, Christianity, or liberalism? I say Christianity is not degenerate, Islam and liberalism are. Right, what would you like to say to that?
Well, I don't agree with that.
Well, what would you like to say?
All I can say is when I look at it, no matter what you say, no matter how high you set the standard, when I look at the Christian nations, it's not true, it doesn't hold up. And they don't really give a shit.
What Christian nation?
We just talked about this few.
What
few
Christian
churches.
nation?
We just talked about a few churches.
What Christian nation?
This is it. You deny it even exists. That's how bad this is. When we talk about Islam, there's many Islamic countries we can give, right?
Give me an example. Give me an example.
Like I said, Iran.
Iran,
Saudi,
where thousands of churches are closing, and where the church is growing the fastest.
Hold on.
Okay, what's your next example? What's your next example? Saudi Arabia,
Do you want to go to the Middle East together?
where the crown prince is liberalizing the laws of Saudi Arabia, allowing nightclubs.
Sure. I've never seen the degeneracy that I've seen in London.
You've never gone to a Saudi Arabian nightclub.
I've been to Riyadh, I've been to Dammam, you don't even know me.
So you've been to a Saudi Arabian nightclub?
No.
But there are Saudi Arabian nightclubs.
If making jokes is all you have, that's absolutely fine. I accept that. I accept that because I know you have nothing. I see your nation. I see your sisters walking down.
What nation?
I see your
What
mothers
nation?
This country.
No,
You're English.
my nation
You're
is the
English.
church. No, I'm a
You're all
Christian.
English.
I'm not
I've been
English.
up and down
How do you know I'm
England. I've
English?
seen the
How do you know I'm
degeneracy
English?
through the root of the
How do you
family.
know I'm
It's
English?
disgusting.
How do you know I'm
You look
English?
like it. You look like
I
it.
look like it.
Absolutely.
Is that racist, ladies and gentlemen? If I had said that to him about his ethnicity, would I be being accused of racism right
now? Churches in
now?
England, you gave me 3 examples. I gave you more churches that I could take you, and they're all empty. And
Right.
You don't even care.
In Saudi
Your only
Arabia-
defense is, there is one-
Vatican.
In
there is
Saudi
one
Arabia-
worship
Vatican, no
space.
more.
In Saudi
No more.
Arabia,
Polygamy of
in
Islam.
Saudi
You have
Arabia,
no
what
defense.
other example have you got?
No defense.
Right.
I have Morocco. I have Algeria.
Morocco
I have
has
Tunisia,
abandoned
I have-
Islam.
I have
Tunisia
Qatar,
has
I have Kuwait,
abandoned
I have
Islam.
Iran, I have
Where
Turkey,
is
I have
your
Malaysia.
caliphate?
What caliphate?
Where is
Who
your
cares about the
caliphate?
All I
Who
need-
cares about the
all I
caliphate?
need- all I
Muhammad
need-
cared about
all
the
I need-
caliphate.
All I need is to
Shall we have a
step-
conversation?
All I need. You don't want to.
Shall we have a
you talk
conversation?
for like an hour after me, right? And when I speak, you just want to talk over me.
Right, shall we
Whenever
do
I
this
step
time?
into Islamic
Shall we do this
country,
time?
It doesn't have to be time. I don't need. You can
So-
talk
so
for as
don't
much as you
interrupt.
like.
Right.
Look, you've talked for like 3 hours straight, and
No,
still
have
you
I?
haven't given me anything. Like all I told you, when I look at
Everyone
the end
else
result,
can decide that.
You want to set the standard of some fantasy that you have is Christianity is this and that, but the end result stands nowhere close to.
Okay, so let me
That's the
reply.
reality. And then
go
all
to a
you're,
mosque
all
and
you're
church
responding
here
with is
in
the degeneracy of Islam, polygamy, slavery. None of that I see anywhere. You can try to take me someplace, but
Yeah.
the best you
Are you
have,
denying that polygamy
the
is
best you
practiced
have,
in Islam?
I haven't seen it anywhere. And by the
Does
way,
it?
it
Like,
doesn't concern me.
look at him.
By the
Look
way,
at him, man.
by the way, it's not-
Are you denying? Are you
I
denying?
haven't
Are you
seen it.
denying? Are you denying
I have
that
not
that
seen it.
slavery was practiced for 1400 years in the Islamic world?
1400
years?
Okay, listen to this.
1400.
1400
Yeah.
years.
No.
You want to talk about?
Wait.
You want to talk about?
Let-
Can I respond? I don't care about anyone here.
Let's
I
have
don't
a
care about Muslims.
conversation.
All I know,
Yeah.
I don't
You're a
care
bit
about
triggered.
fault.
I know. You're losing the
I'm
debate.
not triggered.
I understand
I
why
don't
you're
care about
triggered.
1400 years ago.
Right?
All I see is
The
today. I look at
conversation
today.
is breaking
I
down.
look at-
Let's
I
have a
look
conversation.
I look at life in London today,
Yes.
which I assume you're English and you're proud of the city.
You're making a massive
Okay,
assumption
fine.
there.
I just look at the city today, right? And I see the result of it.
Okay, can I
I
reply?
don't care about 1400 years ago.
Can I
don't care
reply?
about it, yeah.
Can I reply? Okay. Right. So, like, try and pay attention this time. Yeah. Right. No, you won't. No, you won't.
Guys.
So I'm going to debate you later. I'm going to debate you. Yeah. Guys, do you want to take? Do you want to? Yeah. Like, don't, guys. All that happens is this is what they do. They get triggered and then they interrupt the conversation. Just ignore them. Yeah. So like, let me respond. Let me respond. Right. Yeah. So, firstly, let's get something clear. The nation of the Christians is the church. We're not English. We're not French, we're not Spanish, we're not Portuguese, we're not German,
Is there any
we're not
country- is there any
Americans,
country you're proud
we're not Polish or Bulgarians,
country-
we're not
is there any
Russians,
country you're proud
we
of?
are
You've had thousands of
Christians.
years of history.
That is our nation.
Is there any country
Now,
you're proud
ladies
of?
and gentlemen,
Any group of people? Any
let's be
city?
clear about something. Let's be clear about something. He talked about Islamic countries. He doesn't even know his own religion. There's no such thing as a nation state in the Islamic worldview.
I never said that.
The Islamic
That's not what I
worldview has a caliphate. Where is the caliphate? It's dead. It's gone.
Man, all I
It's
said-
been
all I said
destroyed.
was when I visit
Even the
Islamic
very
countries.
idea of the nation state is, according to Islamic categories, a corruption of Islam. Because Islam doesn't have a category called the nation state. It doesn't exist. So the idea
So there are no
that
countries that claim to be
Christians have abandoned Christianity, but Muslims are keeping to Islam, they don't even have a caliphate.
So there are no countries
But
that
the
claim to be
Church
Islamic.
of Jesus Christ is still here.
So there are no countries that
So
claim to be
he
Islamic.
wants to see an example of Christian countries
Are there
or
any
Christian
nations-
influenced
are there any
countries.
nations that implement
So I'm going to give him a
Islamic law?
whole bunch of examples. Go to Poland, go to Hungary, go to Slovakia. You will not see the degeneracy of the West. But what did he talk about? He talked about Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia has no legitimacy in the Islamic worldview because Islam believes in a caliphate. Let's talk about the most fanatical Muslim country in the world today, Pakistan. What a mess Islam has made of Pakistan. Total mess. You've got violence on a daily basis, bombings, Muslims, Hindus, Muslims, Christians. The whole country is 2 steps away from falling into anarchy and being taken over by the Taliban. And he has the audacity to complain about London, a country, incidentally, that all of the Muslim audience that can hear my voice in this park have chosen to come to, and most of them are living here. They're not choosing to go and live in Saudi Arabia. I wonder why. They're not choosing to go and live in Morocco. I wonder why. Do you know why? Because the West is better than the Islamic world, and the Muslims are voting with their feet. They are not choosing to flee to the Muslim world, they're choosing to flee to our world. Why? Because our world gives better prospects, better prosperity, better law and order, better institutions than the Islamic world does. Go on, your turn.
First of all, what you said about migrants is actually inaccurate. Because if you look at the average income of all the Muslims that live in Riyadh to Abu Dhabi, they're far more wealthier than the immigrants that come here who are desperate, and they're really, you're talking about classes of people. It has nothing to do with religion. And then secondly, when we talk about the nations of Islam, there are many countries that claim to be Islamic, and they actually do what they say. They don't pretend. For example, when you go to like certain places in even Dubai, or like other examples like Kuwait, Qatar, they will stand up to the legislative powers around Islam, right? There is no single country on the planet that I can think of that's Christian. After all thousands of years of history, all I see is churches being converted into building blocks, hotels, casinos. You're failing all over the place, and you're telling me the text is right, so there's nothing wrong with the followers. Even the Poland example you gave, most of Europe is finished. The only country that's like politically far right is like Hungary, and even then it's not even close. So you're telling me that degeneracy exists in Islam, polygamy, this and that's a problem. But there is no single nation in the Western world that's Christian or anywhere on the planet. And how could you say it's winning? When all I see, when I look at the world, when I look at the problems, there are far more Christians giving into everything that we've been told, from LGBT to all the other crap that the West is fan of. And then you compare it to like, let's say, Turkey, Iran, or whatever.
But look at Africa.
It's not even close. What about Africa?
Wait, brother, he's using you. He's using you, brother.
Subscribe to the same amount of degeneracy.
Yeah, brother. He's using you to. So the reality is. So allow me to reply.
So what I was going to say.
Allow me to reply.
There is a level of unity that's relevant for this matter, right? Christians are not united anymore.
So allow me to reply. Allow me to reply.
In the park, you're the only one who actually.
Can I reply?
The guy who's just singing random crap.
Can I reply?
And yet the Muslims are standing up, even though they're like 2-3%, they are standing up
Right.
for what they believe in, no matter what.
So let me reply.
And then in the Christians churches of England, you have LGBT all over the place.
So let me reply.
Liberal value.
So let me reply. Because
You've
once
replied
again,
5 times.
so once again, all you've done is deal with stereotypes. I gave
I'm telling you, for
3
thousands of years of
examples. All right, I've got to
history,
raise my
you're
voice.
this
I'm
and that.
sorry I have
When
to
you look at the
shout,
snapshot
but
of
he's
the world,
triggered and he won't let
I'm
me
not
speak.
triggered.
So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, he's had to deal in stereotypes. He's had to say, all you Christians, you're finished. And yet I gave 3 examples.
That's what I said.
I gave 3 examples where Christians in Poland, Hungary and Slovakia don't go along with the liberal agenda. And the brother points out another example. In Africa, in Kenya and Gambia and other places where Christians dominate, they are resisting the liberal agenda being pushed by the United States. And I applaud them. I applaud them. And I applaud my brothers and sisters in Eastern and Central Europe who are also resisting. And I say to the West, I say to you English, because I'm not English, I'm a Christian. I say to you English, that you have better examples in Eastern and Central Europe and in South and Central Africa on how to run a society than you do from the EU, the United States, or the United Kingdom, or France, or Canada, or Australia, or New Zealand. We don't have to keep following the madness of the liberal elites. We can reject them, we can remove them. But, ladies and gentlemen, when we reject that degeneracy, shouldn't we also reject the degeneracy of Islam? The degeneracy of Islam that practices polygamy, that practices abortion, that legitimizes slavery. I can still buy black children as slaves today. I just have to go to the Islamic world to do it, and it will cost me less than a McDonald's, ladies and gentlemen. Chad, there, I've just mentioned it. Chad, we're having a conversation. So you want to jump into this conversation?
You can say what.
Wait, I haven't finished. If you want to come into the conversation, when you want to come into the conversation, come here, madam. Right, well, I'm just going to continue speaking. Let me finish, and then you can reply if you want to. Should we allow that degeneracy? Because we are being told that we should reject the degeneracy of liberalism. If we are going to reject the degeneracy of liberalism, should we not also reject the degeneracy of Islam? She's already admitted that polygamy is acceptable in Islam. So therefore, why should we accept that? What about domestic abuse that is legitimized in Islam? Go on, sister.
Can I say something?
How about you talk with that sister?
So there's so many arguments here about this religion and that religion and what these people are doing and that those people are doing, and so they're not real Christians, or they're not real Muslims, or they're following this or they're following that, or they're real Muslims but they're bad Muslims. You know, the only important thing is, when you leave this earth, where are you going? To make sure you get to heaven. And there is only one being in the whole of history. Let me talk. There is only one being in the whole of history who came to die for the sins of man, because we all, both Muslims and Christians, believe in the story of Adam and Eve and the Garden of Eden. And Adam ate that fruit. He disobeyed God. He was neither Christian nor Muslim. He was just the father of all mankind. From him, all of us came forth. We who call ourselves Christians, call ourselves Muslims, call ourselves Hindus, call ourselves Buddhists, call ourselves whatever. We all came from Adam. And Adam.
What you've got to stop doing is what's the true Mancuan fallacy, which is this idea of you're attacking the believers, but you're not looking at the beliefs. And you're basing.
The believers not relevant.
The believers are relevant insofar as they are keeping to the beliefs or not keeping to the beliefs. Prove it. Prove to me. Prove to me. Prove to me. That's again. You're working to ignorance and fallacies. All you're doing is, oh wow! I have Muslim friends who support. I have Muslim friends who support the idea of polygamy. My gosh, what do you want? A giant list? What does this prove?
What does that say?
What it tells me that you're ignorant.
If I have 3 children,
it tells me that you're ignorant.
I've been taught manners to.
It tells me that you're ignorant.
What does that say about the
It
message?
tells me you're ignorant.
So
it tells me you're ignorant.
Either the message is
it tells me you're ignorant.
Christians are weak.
So so now let me demonstrate the fallacy of his argument.
He's been talking for hours.
Let me demonstrate the fallacy of his argument by reversing it, and look how quickly he switches on logic. Why is Islam being kidnapped by Islamic extremists where they are and around the world?
Iraq.
Where? Right, let me give you Somalia, Palestine, Lebanon, Pakistan, Indonesia, Philippines, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, let's think of Egypt, Nigeria, South Sudan, North Sudan. I mean, Why
There
is
is a strong
Islam?
correlation,
Why
but
is
it doesn't mean
Islam?
it's causation.
Why is Islam?
It doesn't mean it's
Ah,
Islam.
notice. Now, do you see? Suddenly, his
Let me
brain
finish.
switched
Let me
on.
finish. Let me
That
finish.
correlation is not
because I
causation.
have enough-
Suddenly,
because
he
I have
understands the point I was
Because
trying to
I have
make.
enough examples.
Suddenly,
Because I have
suddenly he
enough- Because I have
understands.
enough examples of
Which
the
means
contrary.
that
You
he
don't.
understood my logic to begin
Bob, you
with,
don't, Bob.
but he was intellectually
Because you have-
disingenuous
because you have no
because he had
examples.
a sound bite that he wanted to
No,
get out and not
because-
engage in real
Because
debate.
I have enough alternative.
You've just been exposed,
I have
bro.
Enough alternative
Just
examples.
exposed, bro.
So his argument is, oh, look at all these countries that are Muslim, they're having problems, so Islam is a problem. And I'm telling you, I have enough counter examples.
Such as?
Such as, like I said, Saudi, the Middle East. and
Saudi
many other
Arabia
religions.
is Yemen and has killed 1 million
Let me
people
finish,
in Yemen.
Let me finish.
Go and
they
ask
have the-
the
Look,
children
just
in
because-
Yemen
just because you
whether
have a religion-
Saudi Arabia is a
Just because you
problem.
have a religion doesn't mean you're not going to have
So
some
try another
political-
example, 'cause that just failed.
Just because... Well,
Are you aware that Saudi Arabia has nearly as many people
Can I
in
speak?
Yemen
Can I
as
speak?
the Muslims accuse
Can
the
I speak?
Americans of in
Can I
Iraq?
speak?
Why you interrupted
Can I
me?
speak?
Oh,
Just
you'd like to have a
because-
conversation?
Just because there are political fights or whatever, or wars, doesn't necessarily mean it's down to the religion, frankly speaking. That's just given. What I'm concerned with is the state of society when you look at it and how people live, not some foreign intervention or fighting over oil or some crap that's influenced by the US or NATO and all the other.
Can I reply?
we know about.
Can I
Yeah.
reply to that point? Right. So now notice that my interlocutor has suddenly discovered logic.
No, I
Wait,
haven't.
wait,
You're
no, I
cherry-picking.
let you speak. Let me
Because
speak
it's
without
wrong.
interruption. My
You're
gosh, man.
cherry-picking. Go.
My gosh, man. I know you're getting bruised in this debate, but relax, bro. Right? Now notice, when I was trying to point out that his generalization about Christians and the failure of some Christians in the West to stand up against liberalization, and I kept trying to say, no, that doesn't reflect what Christians believe or practice. He couldn't get it, and he kept just repeating himself. But when I flipped the logic on him, and I used the example of a minority of extremist Muslims who commit violence around the world, suddenly he discovered logic, and all of a sudden could make the distinguishment between good examples of Muslims and bad examples of
didn't.
Muslims.
You're making this up.
But yet he ignores the
That's not
fact
what I
that
said.
we've mentioned places like Kenya, Poland, Slovakia, Bulgaria. You try marching LGBT pride in Russia, watch what happens to you. You won't get very far because it's illegal. And why is it illegal? Because the Russian Orthodox Church convinced the Russian government to ban it completely. So the reality is we do have alternative Christian examples to liberal Western secular degeneracy.
But you have to look far as Russia.
But,
you have to
ladies
look
and
as far
gentlemen,
as Moscow. Yeah,
but
frankly
look,
speaking,
he has
frankly
to look as
speaking.
far as Saudi Arabia,
No, I don't. I
a
could just
country
look down
that's
London. What are you talking
murdered
about?
1 million people in
talking about?
Yemen.
Man,
You don't know
all I have to
anything,
do-
bro.
all I
You
have
don't
to
know
do-
anything.
all I have to
Now
do-
notice he's
all I-
interrupted.
Okay,
Notice
I'm
he's
bad.
interrupted.
All right, you're perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
So
All
he
I
won't
have to do-
complain when I interrupt him. Go on.
All I have to do is walk down any Muslim community across England, France, maybe parts of California, which hopefully you've seen, the Armenian community, right? And I see how they stand up to what they believe in. So I don't need to go as far as Moscow. That's really desperation, yeah?
But you went as far as Saudi Arabia.
It's an example of a nation because I know
Like my example of a nation
I know
in Russia.
No nation of Christianity. Like you
How many more examples do you want to be given?
You had to say Poland, and
You
now
keep
have to
saying
say
that you.
Orthodox Church
So
of
now you're
Russia.
starting to register. We have got examples on the table.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
What, like
So in that case,
Poland?
Saudi Arabia doesn't
Okay,
count
hold on,
then, does it?
hold on. Okay, so Poland. So it does exist.
Oh, amazing! He's got some geography. He
No,
knows Poland
no,
exists.
Because earlier you said no. Well, I hope everybody who's been listening pays attention to him. You said it doesn't exist. You are a nation of people. There are no nations.
Yes,
this and
the
that.
church
you
is
kept
the
bouncing
nation.
around, and now you're claiming Poland, Bulgaria.
See, if you'd actually
also-
listened, what I said was
Let's
that
see
these
what
were
you're claiming,
places where the
because you keep
yeah, well,
changing.
but that's because you're
Okay,
not listening.
so
At
Poland-
no point in this conversation
Okay,
have you
Poland,
listened
Bulgaria, Russia.
to anything that I have said, and that's
I'm
why
desperately trying to
every
make
time
sense.
you speak, I just get to embarrass you
I'm
some more.
desperately trying to make sense of it because, like we said, there are many nations in the West who we thought were Christians.
There are many
and you-
nations in North Africa that are
Okay.
formerly Muslim, that are
We gave
no
the
longer
example of the-
Muslim.
we gave the
Morocco
best
and
example of the
Tunisia
UK. We
are
gave the
being
best
an example.
We gave the best example
Let's
of
let's
the
look
UK,
at
which
let's
you
look at the
denied.
UK. Let's look
Yeah.
at the UK, right? Who makes up the majority, or what is the majority faith of prisoners in our prisons? Muslims.
Hold on.
Who?
We get our
What
view
is
from
the
prison.
majority? What is the majority faith of our women in our battered women's shelters, i.e. women who suffered domestic abuse? Muslims. The fact of the matter is, 250,000 uniformed Salvation Armyists, 250,000 do more charity work in this country than 4 million Muslims. That's just one part of the church. I've not even added on the Church of England, the Baptist Church, the Methodist Church, the Russian Orthodox Church, the Greek Orthodox Church, or the Presbyterian Church or the evangelical churches. The reality is Christianity is bearing fruit. Earlier in this conversation, you referenced.
Do you consider this country as a Christian?
when you well, no, I don't. No, I'm going to finish my point. Earlier in this conversation, he referenced about the richness of the Muslims in the Middle East is held by less than 1% of their entire population, i.e. the richest top 1%, who are the rulers of those kingdoms and control the oil, which makes them some of the richest people in the world. And yet, per capita, by GDP, the lowest part of those Muslim societies are some of the poorest. Why? Why? Because the system of zakat doesn't work. Christians and the welfare state that was set up in 1945, influenced by Christians like William Temple, ladies and gentlemen, and the Archbishop of Canterbury at the time, established a system where in this country we pay 20% tax in redistributive taxes. It's actually 40% redistributive taxes when you add on the NHS.
So what happens to it now?
So that means in the influenced Christian West, we redistribute 40% to the poorest. In the Muslim world, they're capped at 2.5% on zakat. And that's why, despite having a charitable redistributive tax that can only be given to Muslims, can't be given to Christians, can't be given to Jews, can't be given to Hindus, unlike Christian welfare systems, Muslim populations are some of the poorest in the world, and Muslims are voting with their feet to come to the West because the West is better than what Islam has to offer.
So the subject was degeneracy in the West, and your only argument...
Leaving people in poverty is degenerate.
Can I finish?
No, you interrupted me.
Okay. So you've gone round...
Why all of a sudden are you sensitive
So you've gone round
about interruptions?
denying UK is Christian, desperately trying to see Bulgaria, Poland, and maybe Moscow as good examples.
I gave them as Christian influence.
Now ending up on a note of monetary...
Yes,
benefits.
because
frankly speaking,
it's
even,
degenerate to be so bloody rich.
I would like to hear you speak with the power of your argument than he did with the facts. Go on, just give him it. Give him a couple of minutes.
To embarrass himself, yeah.
Well, in a way,
even with the poverty of the lowest X% of the population, right? The Muslims stand up for the values, and even when you take away that wealth and all the rest of it. And all the examples you give of immigrants coming here, maybe they're poor or they want to be here for better economic circumstances, they actually live by the values. Whereas Christians are like all over the place. I've grown up in this city. I've grown up in Camden. I've had Christian friends, I've had Muslim friends from Bengali background. I've seen it for myself. I don't need you telling me what the Christian book says or does. I've seen it for myself, how they give into everything.
Can I reply?
And this is a country that you're denying is originally Christian, but over time, we can see statistically it's changed a lot. Like I said, all the churches from North London to East London to West London, the only example you had was 3 churches at Bishopsgate that are still somewhat holding up the values. I see it daily in YouTube across the Western Hemisphere that you're just there's nobody there.
Right.
When you look at the world, I'm going to leave it at this. When I look at the world,
yeah, he is. All of his argument is total generalization. But yeah, he calls it Islamophobic if you generalize about Islam and Muslims.
I will generalize.
There you go. I will generalize. In other words, Christophobia is acceptable amongst Muslims, but if you generalize about Muslims, you're Islamophobic.
The degeneracy that's resulted in the West that Christians are not standing up to is not really there, and nobody's to blame. And the UK is now agnostic. Frankly, you're just slowly going to pass it over. All I'm going to say, when I look at the world today, it's a big mess, and anyone who denies it is just not paying attention. And the only people that actually and paying up, like standing up to all the nonsense, I'm Muslim.
Okay, so let me reply to that.
I'm not
Firstly,
gonna add anything.
that's
Anything to
fine.
it. It has
Firstly,
nothing to do with money, from the poorest
okay,
to the wealthiest.
okay, I'm going to
And
reply.
that's
I'm going to
really
reply
amazing.
because if you are what some of the richest people in the world, like the rulers of the Gulf states, are some of the richest people in the world, and you're willing to leave your people in poverty, you are degenerate.
They're not in poverty.
You
What are you
are
talking about?
degenerate.
What country in the Middle
And
East?
the reality is, the reality is,
What
the
country in the
reality
Middle
is.
East?
Now notice the interruptions. Notice the interruptions. Notice the interruptions. It's okay. I'll just have to raise my voice because he knows he's losing the debate, and he's trying to use disruption. Right? So the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, he's right. The world is a mess, and one of the biggest contributors to that mess is the Islamic world. One of the biggest contributors to the mess that the world is in is the Ummah of the Muslims. Why? Because wherever Islam dominates, prejudice, bigotry, intolerance, apartheid systems and violence become normal. Look at Somalia.
Give us stats.
Look at Sudan. Look at North Nigeria.
There's more.
Look at Egypt. Look at Pakistan. Compare Pakistan to India, two countries born at the same time in 1945, born out of the same context, British colonialism. What have we got? The Indians have just landed their first probe onto the moon. Pakistan is a country that's two steps away from being taken over by the Taliban based in Afghanistan. That's the difference between Hinduism and Islam, ladies and gentlemen.
I think
many countries were born during the period of decolonization.
so.
Many of them Muslim, many of them Christian. Go and compare those countries that were former colonies of Europe that are majority Christian and how they are doing to those countries that are former colonies of Europe who are majority Muslim, and you will see that nearly in every measure the Muslim world is doing worse. What's the common factor? Is it a common language? Is it a common economy? Is it a common culture? No, it's a common religion. The common factor of the failure is Islam.